Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to another episode of Wayne's Perspective, where we operate in discipline, decency, integrity, and respect. Um, Today's topic is what's the best way to put this? It kind of rubs me the wrong way, speaking as a father of a 17-year-old. And even though he hasn't experienced anything like this, and quite frankly, I'm glad that he hasn't. I just want to talk about it anyway. But before I get to it, I just want to say to those new to the channel, even though it's new and fresh to the scene, if you haven't checked out my introduction that I posted a few days ago, as of this posting, want to ask you to go over there and check it out. Leave in. I welcome any and all feedback, as well as like it, comment, share it, and we'll continue to proceed from there. But again, for those who have already checked it out, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to it, and we'll go from here. So, I consume a lot of YouTube videos. I watch a lot of YouTube daily, and even when I'm at work, doing my normal work day, I usually have YouTube up listening to something. And if it's not YouTube, it's usually Spotify or something like that because I got to get my hip hop in. But on a serious note, like I said, I consume a lot of YouTube content, and one thing that I've noticed within recent years is that there's a lot of stories that's being covered, even if it's not covered in the mainstream media side. It gets a lot of attention on YouTube, and that's basically teachers' inappropriate relationships with students, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. I was watching a video on Mona D's channel, and again, regarding Mona D, if you haven't subscribed to her already, please subscribe to her. She's a nice sister who gives a lot of good content, and she did a video today. I'm going to leave the link to her video in the description box. Fair usage, of course. She was talking about an issue that was going on. I believe it was in Florida, Wales. Um, basically, I think a woman was arrested for an inappropriate relationship with the student, and I think a man was arrested as well. But like I said, take a look at her video, and you can get some additional context on that. And again, mad props to Mona D and her content. I want to talk about this because my thing is, again, as a father of a 17-year-old, I'm glad he hasn't experienced this, but it's just, I mean, it's not too many words I can use to describe it. It's just number one, it's not something that should be happening. And when I think back to when I was in school along with myself and um, fellow classmates, granted, from a boy's point of view, we may have seen teachers that we had crushes on or teachers that we thought were cute, but never at that time did any of us have any inkling of getting involved with our teachers in any form, whether they were uh, actual teachers or whether they were substitutes. We just never had any thoughts like that. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not recall any time back in the 90s or the 80s for that matter, where it was a large number of teachers having inappropriate relationships with their students. And even if it was, it had to have been very, very limited, compared to what we see today in present day 2024. So going back to when I was in school, our parents back in the day wasn't having it, especially mine. I can imagine what my mom's reaction would have been had I told her that there was a teacher who was taking a liking to me, or even if it was in reverse, and I told my mom that there was a teacher that I liked a lot and I wanted to get into a relationship with her. My mom would not have gone for that. And I don't think any parents of that particular era would have went for it either, for obvious reasons. I mean, it's just so inappropriate for teachers to have relationships with their students. And continuing on, it's like there's been a constant barrage of stories over the last few years that doesn't receive the attention that it should. And the only way that we would know about this is seeing people talk about it on YouTube. And I mean, it's just so many stories, and it just breaks your heart when you see what's happening. Now, I'll say this, and again, I'm not taking sides here because in a case like this, the only side that you can really be on is the side of what's right. And yes, you can be on the side of the student as well, because the student, for the most part, is usually innocent in a case like this. And you always have an adult that's taking advantage of the student. Now, jumping ahead a little bit, you know, I can't believe I even seen instances or heard instances where it seemed like the teacher was made out to be a victim, which is crazy because even if the student in question is of consenting age, which could be what, 18 or whatever, that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right at all, because a teacher should not be having a relationship with that student and vice versa. It's and this is beyond a conflict of interest. I mean, come on now. You know, the teacher is only there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to provide the students with an education. It's not the place to have a relationship with that student. And you can say on the other end, it's not the student's place to have a relationship with that teacher. It's just so immoral. And any other word that you can apply here. Um, the only other points that I want to make is that it seems like when it's a woman that's being charged, or if it's a woman that's usually at the center of this, and let's keep it real, particularly if she's a white woman, it gets very little attention. Especially in this country, it's almost as if they want to talk about it for a little bit and then sweep it under the rug as if it never happens. But God forbid, if it's a man, especially a black man, messing with his student, it'll be worldwide news. Everybody be talking about it. He will be canceled. He will lose his job. And don't even get me started on if he's in a relationship or a marriage. His relationship or marriage will be over. Of course, he'll be convicted in the court of law, depending on what the evidence says, and they'll throw him under the jail. And in this case, rightfully so. But it seems like when the shoe is on the other foot or it's in reverse, it's usually the women, and almost she's never held accountable for it. And then depending on who's covering it and how it's covered, it's almost as if excuses are made for a woman. I mean, come on now, as self-respecting adults, and in this case, I'm a black man. There's no logical reason for any teacher of any kind to be messing with any of their students. There's no justifiable reason for that. Not one bit. And if you come to this space or any other space trying to justify that behavior, you're going to get checked for that. And I'm not trying to come with a combative term, or should I say a combative tone. It's just that something like that should not be condoned. I mean, that should be something that should be frowned upon by everyone, And like I said, if it was a man, trust and believe the whole world would be talking about it. It'll be front page news right now. All the major news outlets will be covering it. Of course, it'll be covered on YouTube. And again, it's just mind-boggling that it's happening on such a large scale, seemingly with no end in sight and no accountability for the people involved. In this case, more than likely it's the women. And speaking of the women, I just want to make one other point to the men out there. Isn't it interesting that when it comes to something like this, a teacher can give lots of loving, okay, quote unquote, for the lack of a better way to describe it, lots of loving and more to an underage child, but will give a man all sorts of grief. It's like a man will have to move mountains to get her attention, but she's so quick to give this love and affection and God knows whatever else to a child. It's interesting how that plays out, huh? A man has to do any and everything to get a woman's attention, but when it comes to the child, it's no holds barred pretty much. And when you sit back and think about that, it's real interesting. It's very interesting for all the wrong reasons, but that's neither here nor there. But again, it's something that should not be happening. And I know it's a lot of other videos out there that's talking about this. And again, shout out to Mona D for covering this, and for all the other content creators who have shed a light on this within the last few years, and hopefully it doesn't continue. And I would say as long as it continues, which hopefully at some point it comes to an end, people need to be held accountable for their actions. And that goes for the men and it goes for the women. But again, in this case, it's mostly the women that's doing it. So, we have to do better. We have to do better as a society. And again, it shouldn't be happening. And like I said, I have a 17-year-old son, and even though he's about to graduate high school this year, I'm glad he hasn't had to experience anything like this, because rest assured, they would have heard from me. And yes, they would have heard from his mom too, So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. And my final thoughts on this is that, speaking as a future politician, I would be in favor of legislation on the state level and, of course, the federal level to criminalize this. And I was thinking earlier when I was on the way home from work, I think the title of a bill, let's say I was in the House of Representatives right now, the title of this bill should be something along the lines of, maybe, you know, um, wow, I was thinking, like Violence Against Children Act or something like that, or um, the Prevention of Misconduct Towards Children Act, something along those lines, But like I said, I would be in favor of some type of legislation to, you know, be debated in the House, move to the Senate, have the votes, and go to the president for his signature. I would be all in favor for legislation like this to make such behavior criminal, because when an adult is messing with an underage child, that should be considered criminal. And it makes it all the worse when it's a teacher that's involved. So I just wanted to get my thoughts out there with that. That's all I have for today. Again, shout out to Mona D for covering this most recent story. And again, I'm going to leave her link in the description box. But in the meantime, let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on teachers having inappropriate relationships with their students and where you stand on the matter. Would you be in favor of legislation from a state and federal perspective? And hell, even a local aspect, would you be in favor of legislation making this a criminal act, or do you see things differently? So I just want to leave it at that. And again, if you haven't checked out my introductory video, be sure to check that out. Like, comment, and subscribe, and also share this video to get the word out there. This is my second video, and I hope to present more going forward. So with that being said, take care, and just remember, the power of the mind is valuable.